Hi, it's Ms. Barnhart, and let's continue our discussion of plants with a look at the plant life cycle and how they grow. Unlike animals, plants have what is called indeterminate growth. What this means is that certain plant parts will grow and differentiate throughout their lifespan. At any one given moment, a plant will have embryonic, juvenile, and mature cells in their bodies. This is made possible because of undifferentiated cells called meristems within the plant. Apical meristems are found at the shoots and roots, and they're responsible for primary growth upwards. Lateral meristems allow for secondary growth in width or thickness. This is in contrast to determinate growth. In determinate growth, cells grow to a certain size and then stop. This is characteristic of all animal cells except for stem cells, and in plant cells other than meristems. It may seem that given this pattern of growth, plants are immortal. However, plants do die. Plants that live for only one growing season are called annual plants. They complete their entire life cycle from germination of the seed to flowering to death in a single year or less. Examples of annual plants are wildflowers and legumes, rice and wheat. Biennials generally require two growing seasons to complete their life cycle. They flower and fruit only in the second year. An example of a biennial is a turnip. Perennials live for many growing seasons. These include trees, shrubs, and many grasses. What's really interesting is that you can count the rings of xylem in a woody dicot and see how many growing seasons have transpired. Dendrochronology is the study of analyzing tree growth patterns. Rings can vary in thickness depending on seasonal growth. Trees grow more during wet and warm years than they do during cold, dry ones, so scientists can use the growth patterns as a method of studying climate change. Rings will be thicker in warmer wet years than they will be in cool, dry ones. Now let's take a look at the plant's life cycle. Plants go through what is called an alternation of generations. This means there is an alternation of a multicellular haploid and diploid forms. While haploid and diploid forms exist in all sexual life cycles, human gametes, for example, are haploid. The term alternation of generations is used only for those life cycles in which haploid and diploid stages are both multicellular. We see this pattern of alternation of generations in some algae and in all plants. Let's take a look at what this really entails. The multicellular diploid stage is called the sporophyte. Meiosis in the sporophyte produces haploid cells called spores. These haploid cells then undergo mitosis to form a multicellular structure called the gametophyte. The gametophyte gives rise to gametes by mitosis. The gametes will fuse, forming a diploid zygote. The diploid zygote then undergoes mitosis to form the multicellular sporophyte. So, the sporophyte forms spores, and the gametophyte forms gametes. All the structures in the sporophyte generation are diploid, and all in the gametophyte generation are haploid. Note that both haploid and diploid cells can both divide by mitosis, but only diploid cells could undergo meiosis because a haploid cell could not have its chromosome number further reduced. Now let's examine how this occurs in the 4 divisions of plants. Let's make a chart. The 4 types of plants are bryophytes, which are the mosses, pterophytes, which are the ferns, gymnosperms, including the conifers, and the angiosperms, which are the flowering plants. I'm going to draw a chart here so I can fill in the information about the gametophyte and sporophyte generation. In bryophytes, the sporophyte is dominant and the gametophyte is dependent. In pterophytes, the sporophyte is dominant, but the gametophyte can exist independently. In gymnosperms, the sporophyte is dominant and the gametophyte is dependent. This is also the case with angiosperms. This is an advantage because harmful genes can be masked in the diploid condition. In both angiosperms and gymnosperms, the gametophytes are reduced to just a few cells within the parent plant. The male gametophyte in this case is the pollen grain, and the female gametophyte is the embryo sac. We will talk more about angiosperm reproduction later on in this lesson.